What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. The new champion Talia is coming out soon, probably in the next week or so maybe, and she's a really awesome character that I'm super excited for. But with this release of a new champion, I thought it might be a great time to take a look at how League of Legends champions get made. Champions are a massive part about what makes League of Legends awesome, but the amount of work, effort, and just heart and soul that goes into every single champion project, especially the champions in the past 2 or 3 years, is something that goes quite underappreciated. Regardless of what your opinion of any given champion might be, it took a massive team of people about a year, sometimes even more, to create that just work of art and add that masterpiece into the League of Legends. So today, instead of looking at the development process of an individual champion, we're going to be looking at the entire champion design process as a whole. So join me today in finding out how a League of Legends champion gets made. Let's get started. Now, every head designer at Riot is different, and they all have their own unique style, but every single one of them directs a team that works with them to create a champion. The champion begins with the head designer working together with the narrative and art designer to find an idea or a design fantasy that they want to accomplish. Sometimes they already know what they want to make, but sometimes finding the initial idea to go off of is a little bit more difficult, in which case they might get help from the art team and look at some character drawings or discuss abilities among the other head designers. Each team begins with 4 people: the lead champion designer, a narrative or story director, the head art designer, and then those 3 sit down in a room with a producer to talk about the idea for the champion that they want to make. Now, this initial idea that they start with is usually very simple. It's something as small as a single ability, one ability, or maybe a gameplay element, or maybe a character art piece, or a personality that they want a character to have. And starting off of that very small and simple idea, they enter a process that Daniel Klein, who is one of the head champion designers at Riot Games, described as ideation. During this process of ideation, they take the super simple and small concept that they have and develop it and brainstorm it a bit more amongst the team until they have it drilled down into one meaningful, concrete, super awesome concept, while also making sure that it's going to be unique and add an element of a new design into League of Legends, and making sure that it isn't too similar to any recent characters as well. For example, if a tank character was released recently, the Rioters probably won't want to make another tank character for at least half a year, if not maybe a full year. This process of ideation involves a ton of character sketches, mood boards, story drafts, rough ideas for their gameplay kits, and a very rough in-game prototype that is pieced together from existing files in order to begin the long and drawn-out process of playtesting. And most importantly, it also includes a whole lot of playtesting and iterations of the champion's kit. They brainstorm some ideas, they write out some paper kits, they implement them in a game, and they just start playtesting and reiterating the heck out of that character. Playtesting for new champions is a lot more complex than you might think, as it starts as one of the most early steps that can happen in the process and continues pretty much all the way up until a champion is finally released. Throughout the design, they add in a little bit more playtesters once they decide that they need some, and eventually bring on a large playtesting team as the design develops, and the playtesting process itself is very sophisticated. There are 2 playtests for a character just about every single day. The gameplay designers start with one playtest in the morning with a focus on collecting feedback about how the character plays, how they feel, and how they interact with the other champions. After collecting feedback, they make some changes throughout the day, sometimes minor, sometimes major, but they make the changes and playtest again at 5 PM, once again collecting feedback, and then preparing for the playtest the next day, and then finally going home. Playtests typically consist of a few games that each of the playtesters play. This ideation process is a big part of where the initial ideas come to life, especially through the playtesting, and it takes the champion design team about a month if they're lucky, but oftentimes takes around 2 months or so to complete. The gameplay design for a character is pretty much always fleshed out before the actual art production is, so a big part of the early conception just involves a whole lot of playtesting of loads of crazy and just random ideas for abilities, and seeing what works out in the direction that they want the champion to take in-game. Once they figure out the general theme and direction they want to take with that character, they enter what they call the pre-production phase of design. At this point, they add a few more designers to the team and artists, as well as a lore team onto their team to help out, since this is the point that they start to see a lot of potential in the actual character. Most champions that get cancelled fall apart at the ideation phase, and we pretty much never hear about them. But at this point they start to make a rough 3D model prototype with some very rough designs and animations of what they think the character might look like. Everyone works together in the same room so that the creative process of the champion can develop as a whole with all of the parts together. The gameplay designers often get ability ideas from the lore team, designing story sketches and reference characters. This way the gameplay design of a character does a nice job of falling into place with the story and the personality of a character as well. Meanwhile, the gameplay designers continue to playtest twice a day and make changes to the in-game character, and the playtests become much more meaningful at this point that the character has a much more dedicated team to playtest them. Meanwhile, the gameplay designers continue to playtest twice a day and make changes to the in-game character, and the playtests become much more meaningful at this point now that the character has a more dedicated team to playtest them. This is when they develop the general idea for what the playstyle of a champion might be and how they're going to play in a game. They develop the champion a lot more through playtesting, and they typically have 3 out of 5, if not more, abilities finalized by the time they finish pre-production. After that, the champion enters the phase that is called full production. The team now reaches its peak threshold of members. What began with a gameplay designer, a narrative designer, an artist, and a producer now becomes a team of producers, development managers, animators, 3D artists, texture artists, visual effect artists, sound engineers, riggers, quality assurance, live designers, dedicated playtesters, and a promo team to make the cinematics and champion spotlights and stuff. When a champion reaches this phase, it becomes a sure thing, and there's no longer any doubt that the champion's not going to make the cut. And at this point, the work on the champion becomes a lot less creative and a lot more just technical stuff, bug fixing, polishing, and tweaking abilities intricately, instead of testing out a bunch of random crazy concepts and seeing if they might work. While during this stage we see the cinematics develop, the lore finalized, and pretty much all of the other out-of-game aspects of the champion mostly completed, while the twice daily playtesting reaches a massive scale with teams of about 30 or even more for bug fixing and tweaking and balancing attempts. Every individual continues their part of the team as the champion develops further, and finally has the design flaws tweaked out of them and the out-of-game stuff completed. Once the champion prototypes are ironed out and the champion is fully developed by the massive team, and all of the assets for that champion have been created and polished, that champion goes into what's called the post-production phase. This is where they try and rush out all of the last-minute things, tweak some numbers, fix as many bugs as the playtesters can find, and do some last-minute ability adjustments. During this post-production phase, the champion goes live on the PBE and gets actually announced on the website. So even up until the very day it's released, a champion continues to be developed and worked on until it finally goes live. Once a champion enters the post-production phase, the lead designer immediately begins work on another project instantly, and the other team members continue to develop and fix parts of the champion that might have been missed during full production, and eventually it moves on and becomes a project for the balance team to handle. The entire process of creating a champion takes about 9 to 10 months total, from the very start to the day the champion goes live on all servers. 9 to 10 months is the most common amount of time it takes to develop a champion, but on a lot of champions it can take much longer, as long as 12 months, 14 months, or even a year and a half to 2 years to fully complete the champion, as a lot of characters run into problems that are just difficult to iron out. Most champion concepts that get cancelled fall into some sort of massive, overwhelming problem at the ideation phase, or maybe they just take too much time and effort to get out of the ideation phase that the project is deemed not worth the time, in which case it's often shelved rather than entirely cancelled. And that is just about the entire champion design process. I hope you guys enjoyed this inside look at what goes into making a League of Legends champion. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you didn't, hit that dislike. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.